Also in the report to the Director of Constituencies, there seems to be a real threat to staff. In the proposals for sports and leisure, the existing 107 staff will be reduced to 18. Community library staff will be reduced by 10, and community centre staff will be reduced from 38 to 6. Are these areas that you feel redundancies could improve efficiency, or will it have a negative impact on the community?
Well, I think we already have been running in the red in the constituency. So of course, where public money can be saved in terms of genuine efficiency, I would not be opposed to that. But we've already had these services downgraded and run down over a number of years. So I don't think there are efficiency savings to be made from a genuine point of view. This, for me, is an ideological assault. The council has not stood up to the government when it gave these horrific figures that, over the next couple of years, you've got to cut by £300 million. That's £300,000 a day, virtually over the next couple of years. And of course, it's going to be direct frontline services affected. Already we're seeing neighbourhood offices closed. Who goes to neighbourhood offices, apart from people who feel they've got no other choice? People who are finding difficulty with claiming the things they need to. If you're well off, you don't go to a neighbourhood office. And so we know the priorities of the national government, and sadly, because we do have a Tory Lib Dem coalition in Birmingham, there's no resistance to this, even though in the hearts they know what's going on. Is it right? They know it's not good for Birmingham, but in order to keep their political positions, they're not raising their voices, which is why it's so important that ordinary people don't get demoralised in the face of these kind of redundancies. I can see even with council staff, when you become more insecure, it makes it more difficult to be confident in resistance, which is why I think it's important that people from all different backgrounds join together. So when we see the students protesting, I don't think we should just leave the students to it. It's an issue for society. It's our responsibility as the next generation. Whether your son or daughter is facing university fees or not is not the issue. This is a moral crime against the next generation. And I believe it's really through that unity, which is why I think what Len McCluskey, the newly elected General Secretary of United, is saying is really, really important. That it's not a fight that the trade unions should do on their own. It's not a fight that the students should do on their own. Communities, students and trade unions should be coming together now, because everybody's affected. And we know they're going to do a divide and rule. We know their politics of distraction. Whether we're going to see racism rise as people get more and more insecure. It's far easier to blame somebody who looks different. We've seen scapegoating throughout history. It's nothing new. It's totally predictable, because what we're not seeing is a narrative of what has brought us to the situation, the economic gambling on the part of the financial elite in this country is why we have got this terrible deficit, the bailout to the tune of hundreds of billions of pounds. That's what is behind this national debt. Instead, we're being peddled the lie that it's because we spent so much on the public sector. The public sector did not cause this crisis, and actually cutting at this time is going to make the deficit worse, not better. So on two grounds, how we got here and how we need to get out of this mess, this government, because it's committed really to an ideological assault, this is not about pragmatism. They've been very clever in having the mantle of practicality. We've got no choice, it's because we've got this debt to pay off, that's why we're doing it. No, this is what they are ideologically committed to. They have every choice. They can choose to invest in our students. For every pound that you invest in university students, you actually get far more back in the economy. It makes economic sense, not just moral sense, to do that. We have a housing crisis in Birmingham. Invest in the building sector. Both private building contractors will benefit, pay more back in taxes, and we'll see something which is socially needed in the city. Are they doing that? No, they're not. And they claim to even be helping small businesses. Of course they're not. This is multinationals who will benefit. We've had this huge bailout, and yet no conditions are put on the banks that now you must pass that money on and lend. And so we're seeing people who cannot get mortgages, we're seeing businesses who cannot get the credit they need. So there's very things that this country needs to keep moving, to move out of this economic crisis. We're seeing the opposite measures. And as I said, this is ideology which has to be countered in a very clear and upfront manner. Yeah. One important point, in terms of the fight back, because I mentioned how important it is that people from all backgrounds, we're all going to be affected in different ways, but let's not get divided and stand up for each other regardless of who's being affected right now. And that's why I think March the 26th is a day that everybody should put in their diary. The TUC have called for a day of action, of mass protest, I think it's really important that it's not just TUC membership that turn up, although they should turn up, but also people from the local communities. And I certainly will be organising coaches and making sure we get a huge representation from Sparkbrook Ward to be there on March 26th. It'd be great to see as many people as possible. I believe that, you know, we've got a parallel to the anti-war movement now with the anti-cuts movement, in the same way that politicians led us into a war based on lies, based on fear. We were told that we might be attacked within 45 minutes, and it's just that people would shut down their kind of critical thinking faculties and buy something which was unpalatable. I think in the same way we're being told a pack of lies that there is no alternative, that because of the debt situation there have to be these cuts. It simply is not true, and we need that mass movement, that mass turnout on the streets. We saw with Margaret Thatcher that when people turned out, when she tried to introduce a poll tax, what happened. And I think that kind of resistance is absolutely important right now.
You mentioned about the lies regarding the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, and also the Lib Dems promising to oppose tuition fees. When politicians make clear-cut promises and then renege on those when they're in power or when the true facts are known, what action do you think should be taken against them?
Well, they need to be punished at the ballot box. And I genuinely believe that Lib Dems will be wiped out in Birmingham. You know, they've sold their souls for a few high positions, and I think the electorate is very much alive to that. And I think come the local elections, the Lib Dems are going to receive a very severe shock.
But is that enough? If someone promises me something, for instance, if I give them my vote, it's in a way a contract. It may not be written down, but it is like a verbal contract in a way. And if then that person receives my vote and then goes and does the exact opposite, if I have to wait for 4 years to then remove my vote from them, that's a very long time. And in that time, they may have convinced someone else to vote for them instead. So should there be any comeback more immediate than waiting till an election to vote them out of office?
Well, there have been these ideas mooted that if a certain percentage of residents feel strongly that there may be a way for the MP to be revoked in a way, but that's still something that has been discussed. The reality is, for a sitting MP, it's 4 years, which is why we see the complacency that we do. But local elections in Birmingham happen every year. So actually there is a very clear way for people to give a message where they've been let down. The sad thing for me, to be honest, is that the Labour Party, in a way you can just say, well, it's pragmatic, they just have to sit back and do nothing right now. The Lib Dems and Tories are exposing themselves and people will be very angry with them, and rightly so. But what is disappointing to date is that Labour has not come out with a credible alternative. And let's not forget, most of the problems that we're seeing are rooted in the fact that New Labour was so closely wedded to the ideology of the Conservatives and the Lib Dems now. So Labour Party introduced tuition fees. The Labour Party deregulated the financial sector. So what I'd like to see Ed Miliband do, in the same way that he did draw a line under the Iraq war issue, and I think that's why he became leader as opposed to his brother, who was not prepared to draw that line, who continued to try and justify something which the British public know was wrong now that everything's come out. You know, we need Ed Miliband to come out clearly and say they got it wrong on the financial sector, and investment, not cuts, is the way out, and to stand side by side with students, to stand side by side with public sector workers and local communities, rather than this half-baked idea, well, we'll do cuts, but just a bit later. You know, that kind of argument, I think, is still giving too much succour to the underlying ideological framework, which I think is the root of this disaster that we're in.